Koukie, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thank you, Mark. What a month it's been, hey?
Can you just quickly outline the key indicators that were published by the ABS during the month of October?
Big one was the CPI. You know, we've touched on that already. The September quarter CPI came in at 1.2% quarter on quarter. It was a slowing in annual terms, but the quarterly increase was about 0.2 higher than expected. As we just said, it was largely due to petrol.
Yep.
And that's going to go unwind next quarter. So that inflation was a bit higher. Not massively, but a bit. We had the employment numbers. We had one of these ones that was a quirky one because employment was really weak. It was only up 6,000 jobs. We normally get 30,000 to keep the status quo. But because the participation rate fell, the unemployment rate ticked down from 3.7 to 3.6. So
it's a mathematical change.
It's a quirk. The labour market's still slowing. Then we had job vacancies down 17%. That's demand for labour. You know, people put a job ad on Seek or Indeed or whatever they advertise for a job. They're down 17% from the peak. So demand for labour. So that's as a leading indicator.
That's a good thing.
So employment's going to be weaker as that filters through to the economy. That was important. Retail sales were sort of okay. They were up 0.9 month on month in September, but a lot of that was due to iPhones, Taylor Swift tickets, and a lot of those Women's World Cup sort of spending and things. And that's all spending. Don't get me wrong. You don't ignore it because it's just those quirky events. But it was sort of explained as something not being sustained in a sense. There was a big increase in department store sales because it was warm and people got their summer wardrobe. They had to sort of revamp their wardrobe. So department store sales of clothes went up a bit. That said, the September quarter numbers, because month-to-month retail sales, it's really fickle, was probably going to be, the quarterly figure in real terms will probably be 0%, no growth. So the summary of the numbers were, again, that proverbial mixed bag. Some were a little bit better, some were okay, and a couple were much weaker. And consumer sentiment remained in the doldrums. So it actually fell back 3 percentage points. So consumers are still gloomy. And when they're gloomy, they tend not to spend much.
So just on consumer sentiment, because I guess it's important for us to explain how that happens, how they work it out, because it's not as if they go and talk to every single consumer in the country. So maybe just explain how the field liaison people work, and they have field liaison people both for the ABS and the RBA. But let's just talk about the RBA's field liaison process.
They start from big business, the ones who are, so if you're asking, say, the retailers, you've got Coles and Woolies, and you've got a big part of consumer spending, grocery stores and the like, and they're related products like Bunnings and Dan Murphy's and all these other subsidiaries that these companies own, basically. And they ask you how your sales going, and they ask, what about your selling prices? That's really important because that's the inflation equation. And so if they say, we're putting up the prices of our foodstuffs, our vegetables have gone up, but the price of our washing powder's gone down, or whatever the case may be, they'll put that into their equation and sort of get a feel for what's happening from the big business sector. They speak to the business lobby groups, so the Chamber of Commerce and the Australian Bankers Association, to see what banks are doing. Are you seeing any increase in bad debts or people behind in their repayments? And
do they go and talk to small business owners?
And they talk to COSBOA, the Council of a Small Business Association
of Australia.
Who are the what do we call it? The body that looks after the small business sector. Because if you're a small business, you can't lobby the government, but if you pay your dues, they have. I think they've got something like a couple of 100,000 members. So the little corner shop, the little shop that sells tiles or whatever with $1 million turnover, they're probably a member of the Small Business Association. So the RBA talk to them too. So they put that all into their melting pot to get up-to-date anecdotes, because we've got to remember too that the Bureau Stats do a great job. But here we are in November. Do you know what the most recent GDP numbers are? They're for the June quarter. The September quarter numbers don't come out till early December. So if they're just assume they're a shocker, just say they're really bad, it's too late. So they've got to ask businesses, what are you seeing now? So we're relying on June quarter data for GDP. Of course, there's nothing much they can do about it because it must be bloody hard to calculate Australia's GDP. $1, $2, $3. So it's a pretty hard thing to do. But so that's why the business liaison is so important. And they do put a lot of weight on the NAB survey, because the NAB do a similar thing. They ask 400 or 500 businesses every month. What are your expected sales? What are you doing with your profits? What are you doing with your labour intentions, hiring people? And the consumer sentiment numbers, where They get the people who poll you for politics. You know, you're going to vote Labor, Liberal, whatever, and 55, 54, whatever. They also ask people, what's your consumer sentiment? Are you feeling is it a good time to buy a major item, like a washing machine or a telly or a car, and the things that cost a lot of money? People say, oh yeah, it's a good time. That's consumer sentiment being strong. People say, oh no, I'm going to hunker down. Consumer sentiment's weak. So they ask these questions, put them into an index, optimists versus pessimists, and get the net figure.
So that they go and get qualitative data as well as quantitative data.
Correct. So it's just touchy-feely in a sense, and that's not being critical.
No.
It's because sentiment.
But they should do it.
And we've discussed animal spirits and sentiment in the past. Why? Oh, gee, this is my grey hair, and you, with all due respect, you remember this too. Why did 17% interest rates in the late 80s not really cause the economy to weaken for about 2 years? Sentiment was so positive.
Yeah.
Why is a cash rate of 4.1 killing the economy now? Sentiment. Sentiment matters a lot.